Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. We're here to basically take some really dense, brain-hurting stuff
Mm.
and try to make it fascinating, maybe even something you can just absorb right now.
Yeah, make it digestible, right?
Yeah, exactly. And today, we're tackling something really fundamental. The idea of a reality, a real existence, that takes up, well, absolutely no physical space.
It sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? Or maybe like a philosophical riddle.
It really does. Because everything we know, everything we measure has coordinates. If you can't point to it, measure it, say it's here, our whole way of thinking says it's, well, not quite real.
Illusory, maybe. But the material we're looking at today insists that the most important things you know, your actual consciousness, your dreams, even your feelings, they exist completely outside of what we call space.
And this isn't just some random idea. We're digging into a specific source here. This is Session 44 from the Early Sessions Book 2 of the Seth material.
Right, recorded by Jane Roberts and Rob Butts way back on Wednesday, April 15th, 1964. This is really where Seth starts laying out the deep cosmology.
So our mission, if you will, is to really unpack Seth's argument here. He basically says our everyday ideas about space and time are just convenient illusions. Camouflage.
Camouflage conceptions, yeah, that's his term. And we're going to explore things like dream locations, how emotions expand, to try and get a handle on what it means for something to be real without being spatial.
Okay, but before we blast off into non-spatial reality, just the usual but important reminder. This deep dive, like all of them, is distributed totally free of charge on all the major platforms. It's for educational purposes.
Absolutely, and we owe a huge debt to the source material itself, the Seth material. We really, really encourage you, if this sparks your interest, to dive into the books yourself.
Please do. Check out the New Awareness Network website and their bookstore. It's at sethcenter.com/the-early-sessions. You can find the original documents there.
We're just guides, really. The real treasure is in those original sessions.
All right, let's get into it. Section 1, the No Space Club, challenging physical reality.
And it starts, as it often does with Seth, from something Jane Roberts, or Rubert, as Seth calls her experience. Just a little thing, almost.
Yeah, the notes mentioned she tried some clairvoyance around 11 a.m., didn't get much, just a milky diffuse light. Kind of a wash.
But then later that evening, like 8:40 p.m., bam. This thought just hits her, seemingly out of nowhere.
What was it again?
Dream locations taking up no space? Just that.
Wow. That simple idea.
It cracks everything wide open. And interestingly, the notes for this session mentioned the dictation rhythm was slowing down again. That was becoming a pattern.
Suggesting the concepts were getting heavier, denser.
Maybe harder to translate, yeah, like needing more care in the transmission. But back to that dream location idea, Seth just grabs onto it. He says that's the proof of non-spatial reality.
Okay, why is the dream location such a big deal? I mean, we all dream.
Because you, the dreamer, absolutely experience a location, right? You see things, you walk on streets, maybe you fly over houses, you interact with the environment. It feels like a valid place to be.
Yeah, definitely. If someone in my dream asked, "Where are you?" I'd describe the dream place.
Precisely. So within the dream, it's a real framework.
Mhm.
But then where is that framework in our physical world? If we try to use our coordinates, our rulers, where does it fit?
Nowhere.
Yeah.
It's not inside my head spatially. Not really. It's not under the bed. It takes up 0 millimeters of space in my bedroom.
Exactly. Seth says if you measure these dream realities only by our spatial rules, they basically wouldn't exist. And that just shows how limited our camouflage conceptions are.
So the moment you wake up, poof, that whole reality just vanishes from physical space.
Yeah.
Like finding out a whole city existed, but only in your mind, taking up no room.
And he immediately connects this to our waking life, to things we know are real but can't locate spatially, like emotions.
Oh, yeah. Emotions are definitely real. Anger, joy, fear.
Yeah.
They can completely run your life.
Totally. They drive huge decisions, change how you see everything, but you can't, hold anger in your hand. You can't see it under a microscope. It takes up 0 physical space.
Yeah. But it intensifies, right? Like I can go from slightly miffed to absolutely furious. That feeling has expanded enormously in its power, its intensity.
Yes. But has your head gotten bigger? Do you take up more room on the couch?
No, definitely not. My spatial footprint is exactly the same.
And that is the crucial point Seth makes about expansion. We're so conditioned to think expansion means getting bigger physically, like blowing up a balloon or a plant growing.
More volume, more space.
Right. But Seth says true expansion, the only real kind, happens in terms of value quality or gradations of intensity. That moment of deep understanding or a sudden wave of love, that's a massive expansion of value.
He uses that color analogy, right?
Mhm.
Red is more vivid, more intense than black. But painting something red doesn't make it take up more space on the canvas than painting it black.
Exactly. The expansion is in the quality, the intensity of the red. And Seth argues this kind of expansion value, intensity, that's the only expansion that's fundamentally real.
So if we apply that to the mind, not the physical brain, but the mind, the consciousness.
Yeah, the mind, which Seth calls the value that gives power to the brain. The mind is constantly expanding, learning, connecting ideas, growing wiser, both for us as individuals and, for the species over time.
But that expansion,
Takes up neither more nor less space. Whether it's the mind of a tiny insect or a human being, the mind simply doesn't exist in spatial terms.
okay, that pushes back hard against the idea that more complex thought must mean a bigger, more complex physical brain taking up more space. How does that work? If the mind's growing in value but not space, how does the brain relate?
Think of the brain as the receiver, the specialized hardware. It's designed to interpret and manifest that non-spatial value expansion within this physical spatial reality.
So the brain might get more complex connections, sure.
Right. It adapts to handle the increasing value and intensity coming from the mind. But the value itself, the actual consciousness, the intelligence, it isn't in the space the brain occupies. It's like the software running the computer, not the physical size of the computer case.
So neuroscientists looking for the location of consciousness in the brain. They're looking for something that isn't spatial in the first place.
According to Seth, yes. They're looking at the camouflage pattern, the physical effect, not the non-spatial cause. To deny the non-spatial is to ignore so much of what makes us human: creativity, thought, deep feeling.
We're only seeing the physical shadow, basically.
That's a good way to put it, just the footprint of the real expansion.
Okay, so if the individual mind and emotions exist non-spatially, what happens when we scale this up, like to the whole universe? This is where Seth really starts messing with our heads, right? Section 2.
Oh, yeah. He drops the bomb here. He says our whole idea of space, the way we conceive of it, is completely erroneous.
Erroneous how?
He says we think of it as just emptiness, a void that needs to be filled up, like a big, dark, empty box.
Which is pretty much the standard view, isn't it? Vast, empty space between stars and galaxies.
Right. And Seth argues that this fundamental mistake, seeing space as emptiness, is what leads to our slightly weird cosmological theories.
Like the universe expanding.
Yeah, expanding with bulging sides, galaxies bursting out into nowhere. He makes it sound almost frantic.
Like you said, almost comical, like a cartoon balloon just inflating endlessly into nothing.
It's the logical conclusion if you start with the idea of empty space. Expansion has to mean filling more volume, moving faster outwards. It creates this whole picture of a race against some boundary that isn't really there.
So what's the alternative? If space isn't an empty box, what is it?
This is where he introduces what he calls fifth-dimensional space. And that term is tricky because it makes us think of, another direction like length, width, height, and something else.
Like adding another coordinate, X, Y, Z, W.
Exactly. But that's not what he means at all. For Seth, this fifth-dimensional space, the basic reality, is vital energy. It's self-alive. It has endless abilities of transformation.
Whoa. Okay, so not another spatial dimension, but a dimension of life. Potential.
Consciousness, potential, sheer aliveness. It's the absolute opposite of an empty void. It's a field of living, conscious energy.
That flips everything. The universe isn't a dark room waiting for lights to turn on. It's the light itself, the energy itself being alive.
Precisely. And this basic universe, this living energy, is constantly expanding. But how?
Not in size.
No. It expands in terms of intensity, quality, and value, just like we talked about with emotions in the mind. The universe is constantly becoming more, but more value, more intensity, not more meters across.
And this vital energy is what actually forms everything, including our physical reality.
Yes, it forms all existences, including the physical one we perceive, the one we try to measure, what Seth calls the camouflage universe.
So our universe, the one with stars and planets and space-time rules, that's the camouflage.
It's the projection, the pattern that this inner, vital, non-spatial energy takes. When it manifests in a way our senses can pick up, we spend all our time probing the pattern.
We're trying to measure the shadows on the cave wall.
Exactly, without realizing the deeper non-spatial reality casting those shadows.
Let's use that brain-mind analogy again to lock this down. The brain is physical,
Mhm.
takes up space, exists in time. That's the camouflage.
Right, and the mind, the consciousness, exists behind or through the brain, taking up no space.
So similarly, our camouflage universe exists in space and time, follows the laws of physics we observe.
But it's not the real basic universe. It's a manifestation, any more than the brain is the mind. Space itself, then, isn't fundamental emptiness. It's a structured filter, a set of
A
rules.
way to organize experience.
Yes, a conceptual pattern that lets us experience all that inner intensity and value in a sequential, localized way. It makes it manageable for our current state of being.
But why? If the fundamental reality is this vibrant living energy, why bother with the camouflage? Why the rigid rules of space and time?
Oh.
Seems limiting.
Seth implies it's a kind of training ground, a specific environment designed for learning particular lessons, like learning how to take that formless inner energy and shape it into physical constructions we can actually manipulate.
Using our outer senses.
Yeah, our senses like sight and touch are incredibly narrow filters, really, but they're perfect tools for interacting with the specific spatial temporal pattern. We need the structure, the limits, to focus our consciousness and learn certain things, like learning to walk before you can run.
Okay, so we've kind of dismantled space as the ultimate container. What about time? Its partner in crime. If the inner reality isn't in space, surely it's still subject to time.
Nope. Seth tackles that head on too. He says, just like with space, the dream world doesn't really exist in time as we measure it either.
You mean the classic thing where you dream a whole lifetime in like 5 minutes of sleep?
Exactly that. You experience weeks, months, maybe years of narrative events unfolding sequentially within the dream. But on the clock by your bed, barely a few seconds or minutes have passed. That right there shows duration and clock time aren't the same thing. They're not absolute.
So time, our familiar ticking clock, is just another feature of the camouflage.
He calls it a tinge, like a slight coloration or an attribute that belongs only to the physical camouflage form. The real inner realities, mind, dreams, ideas, they only touch time when they sort of dip into our physical universe.
Like putting your hand into water.
Yeah.
While your hand is wet, it has the properties of being in water, but your arm outside the water doesn't.
That's a great analogy. The mind operates outside the water of clock time. When it interacts with the physical brain and body, it takes on temporal characteristics for that interaction. But its fundamental nature isn't bound by sequence.
Okay, this leads to the absolute core question then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If the real universe, the mind, dreams, if they exist but not in space and not really in time, what do they exist in? What's the medium? If it's not space-time, what is it?
And Seth gives this incredible, dense answer. The medium is the value climate of psychological reality.
Wow. Okay. Value climate of psychological reality. Unpack that. What does that even mean? Is it like the overall mood of the universe? Jung's collective unconscious.
It's much more fundamental than that, I think. He says this value climate literally replaces what we think of as space. It's the underlying quality, the psychological atmosphere, maybe, that makes existence and consciousness possible in the first place.
Like the air we breathe, but for consciousness itself.
Kind of. He calls it one of the most powerful principles behind the vitality that makes up everything else. It's not just a container. It's the generative principle. It's the why of existence, this inherent quality that drives towards value.
So instead of physical distance, like meters between objects,
You have psychological distance, determined by similarity or difference in value or intensity. If two minds share a profound value, they are psychologically close, connected, even if their physical bodies are light years apart. Proximity is about resonance, not location.
and a key feature of this value climate is spontaneity.
Yes, spontaneity. And this spontaneity shows itself most clearly in what Seth calls the spacious present.
The spacious present. Okay, is that different from just the present moment?
Very different. Our present moment is like a tiny sliver moving along a fixed line of past, present, future, clock time. The spacious present, though, exists spontaneously and simultaneously.
Meaning all time exists at once. Past, present, future.
In a way, yes. Not as a fixed timeline you can read like a book, but as a dynamic, accessible field. All potentials, all experiences, exist within this nonlinear present.
But hang on, if everything is simultaneous, how do we experience things lasting? How does anything have duration? How does an idea, say, endure?
That's the paradox. The spacious present does contain qualities of duration, but not duration measured against a clock. Think about a powerful idea like freedom or love. That idea endures. It has validity, presence, power over long stretches of what we call time.
But the idea itself isn't thinking, oh, it's Tuesday, or I've existed for 2,000 years.
Exactly. It just is, existing in a state of sustained value. Duration, in this context, means the endurance of value, the persistence of quality, not ticking seconds.
This completely changes how we think about growth, too. In our camouflage world, growth means getting bigger, taking up more space, projecting into the future over time. Like, learning a skill takes hours of practice, sequentially.
Measurable progress over time. But in the inner universe, within that value climate, growth is only about value or quality expansion. It's independent of the clock and physical size.
So what's the inner equivalent of our physical law of growth?
Seth calls it value fulfillment. That's the inner reality's fundamental drive, the correspondent to our need to grow physically.
Value fulfillment. So it's this constant necessary pressure within consciousness to seek deeper meaning, richer experience, greater intensity, regardless of space or time constraints.
It's the engine of existence within the value climate. Without that drive towards fulfilling value, consciousness would stagnate, which is impossible in such a dynamic medium. It's the universe answering the why bother question with, because fulfilling value is the nature of being.
Okay, so if our familiar laws of physics are just local rules for the camouflage,
Temporary bylaws for this specific reality simulation, yeah.
then there must be deeper, more fundamental laws that govern the inner universe, the value climate itself.
Exactly. And Seth says these inner laws don't just apply there, they apply everywhere, to all camouflage universes, all levels of consciousness, on any plane. These are the truly universal laws.
And he gives us 5 of them in this session. We already have the first one, value fulfillment. That's the driving force.
The prime directive, you could say. And we see it play out in our world through things like evolution life constantly striving for more complex, richer expression, or through physical growth, and significantly through reincarnation, the entity's journey across lifetimes to maximize its value and intensity. It ensures existence is always meaningful, always striving.
Makes sense. What's the second law? What enables this fulfillment?
Law number 2 is energy transformation. Energy, which is fundamentally consciousness, is never static. It's constantly shifting, changing form, moving from one state or manifestation to another.
So nothing is ever truly lost, it just changes form.
Precisely. This constant transformation, combined with the drive toward value fulfillment, allows for a kind of simultaneous and spontaneous durability. Things persist by changing.
Okay, so value fulfillment gives the direction, more value, and energy transformation provides the mechanism, constant change.
You got it. Direction and dynamism. And that leads right into the third law, spontaneity. All consciousness, at its core, exists in the spacious present in a spontaneous way.
Meaning it's not predetermined, not locked into cause and effect chains.
Fundamentally, no. It's free, creative, capable of genuine novelty in any given moment within the spacious present. This is crucial for free will and creativity.
If everything was rigidly determined, there'd be no real choice, no real creation.
Right. So spontaneity is key. Now, the fourth law sounds almost like the opposite, but it flows from the others. Durability.
How can something be spontaneous and durable? Doesn't durability imply something fixed and unchanging?
Not in this context. Durability here isn't about being rigid like a rock. It's about enduring as a conscious identity within the spacious present, through constant change. It's the ability to maintain self-awareness and value across transformations.
Ah, so it's achieved because of the first 2 laws.
Exactly. Seth says durability is a natural and necessary consequence when value, fulfillment, and energy transformation are mastered. If you're constantly transforming your energy in ways that fulfill value, you don't cease to exist. You just keep becoming. You endure through flow, not by resisting change.
That's actually really profound. Ultimate reliability comes from perpetual valuable change, not from staying the same.
It's a different paradigm of stability. And finally, the fifth law ties this all back to our experience, creation.
How does this universal law of creation show up here in our camouflage universe?
It manifests through what Seth calls idea constructions. These are the ways that inner non-spatial values and intentions try to express themselves physically.
Like thoughts becoming things.
Sort of, but it's more like the inner reality projecting itself outwards. These idea constructions become idea approximations of the inner reality. But because you're translating something non-spatial and intensely complex into a limited spatial three-dimensional form,
The translation is always going to be distorted, incomplete.
to a large degree, yes. Those distortions and approximations are the camouflage patterns we perceive as physical reality. We're essentially trying to sculpt with light using clay. You get an approximation, but it loses some essential quality.
And our big lesson here on this plane.
Is learning energy transformation, specifically learning how to take that inner energy, that consciousness, and form it into the physical constructions of this reality, manipulating them with our very specific, very limited outer senses. Our whole physical life is an exercise in this translation process.
Okay, so if our main job is learning energy transformation, what about the biggest transformation we perceive, the one we call death?
Right. And Seth's take on death is completely consistent with everything else we've discussed. He says it has no more basic reality than has your idea of time and space.
So it's another camouflage concept, an illusion based on our limited perception.
Exactly. He calls death a blind spot in our current ability to perceive the ongoing processes of energy transformation and value fulfillment.
That's chillingly precise. It's not an ending, it's just where our current senses fail us.
It marks the limit of our comprehension, a complete dwindling of comprehension, as he puts it. Our outer senses are tuned to this specific frequency, this camouflage plane. When the energy transforms and moves beyond that frequency,
We can't follow it. The signal drops out for us.
right. What we call death is simply that energy transforming onto a sphere, a level of reality that our outer senses just can't pick up. The consciousness leaves the specific brain pattern, the value moves beyond the immediate camouflage, and from our limited viewpoint, it seems to vanish.
And this misperception, this idea of death as an absolute end, is tied back to our mistaken belief in absolute cause and effect.
Yes. Seth argues that many contradictions or paradoxes we see only arise because we cling to false ideas, especially the idea that cause and effect is this rigid, unbreakable chain reaction governing everything.
If cause and effect were absolute, what would that imply?
It would mean that continuity, a fixed, unchangeable past leading inevitably to a fixed present and a predetermined future, would also have to be absolute. The timeline would be set in stone.
Okay, but if the timeline was set in stone,
Then things like clairvoyance, seeing the future, would be utterly impossible. You can't glimpse a future event if it hasn't been rigidly paused yet, or if the timeline is absolutely fixed.
but clairvoyance does happen. People do have accurate precognitive experiences.
Exactly. So Seth uses this as proof. The fact that clairvoyance is possible shows that there is only apparent cause and effect in our reality, and no absolutely fixed past, present, or future. The universe is spontaneous, flexible. Consciousness can move within the spacious present.
And this ability isn't just for, psychics. Seth says it's a constant background process,
Yes, he argues that clairvoyance operates continually, subconsciously, as a natural method of warning and protection for all organisms.
like an inner early warning system.
Pretty much. He says every organism has subconscious knowledge, like a deep background awareness of potential personal dangers. Even, he states, knowledge of the timing of its own physical death.
Oh,
What?
seriously? We subconsciously know when we're going to die.
That's what he claims. And that the species as a whole has advanced subconscious knowledge of major events like wars or natural disasters. It's a constant protective mechanism operating beneath our conscious awareness.
So why don't we consciously know all this? Why is the ego kept in the dark? It seems useful.
Maybe too useful. Seth suggests that if we were consciously aware of every potential danger, every future challenge, the psychological insecurity would be overwhelming. Life on this plane would be unbearable.
Yeah, I guess constant future dread wouldn't be fun. The camouflage, the illusion of linear time, actually protects the ego, gives it a sense of stability.
It provides a manageable framework, and this underlying subconscious knowledge, the knowledge that we do endure, that death is just transformation, that we are fundamentally valuable. This is what fuels our need for meaning, for spiritual frameworks.
So that's where religion comes in.
He suggests that numberless religions are like symbolic systems. They are idea symbols that try to translate that deep inner knowledge into terms the conscious ego can grasp, even if they use the language of the camouflage, heavens, hells, fixed judgments, distorted timelines. They're attempts to make the non-spatial truth digestible.
Okay, so if we want to start consciously getting a feel for this deeper reality, the value climate, how do we do it? We can't just step outside space-time.
No, but Seth gives us a tool that exists within our reality but isn't strictly bound by clock time. Psychological time.
What does he mean by psychological time? Like when time flies when you're having fun?
Exactly like that. Or when you're engrossed in a creative project, or deep in meditation, or even just daydreaming. Those moments where your sense of duration isn't tied to the clock, but to the depth and intensity of the experience.
Time warps based on subjective experience.
Right. Seth says that psychological time is part of the value climate, appearing in a fairly uncamouflaged form right here in our universe. It lets us get the feel of it by practicing entering those states, paying attention to psychological time.
We're essentially practicing operating within the spacious present, learning its rules.
We start to understand duration based on intensity, proximity based on value, not just meters and seconds. It's like the training wheels for navigating non-spatial reality.
Okay, let's try to wrap this up. We've gone pretty deep. Back to the core idea. A universe that fulfills itself, expands in value, but takes up no space. It's still hard to picture.
It is. Intuition helps more than logic here. Seth gives that analogy of the imaginary painting.
Right, the painting. Tell us that again.
Imagine you're looking at a painting. The artist can create this incredible illusion of depth mountains receding into the distance, a road stretching seemingly for miles towards the horizon.
You perceive immense distance in the painting.
Yes, but does that painted distance ever actually touch the physical back of the canvas? Does it take up physical depth?
No, of course not. It's all on the flat surface. The depth is perceived. It's conceptual.
Exactly. That perceived conceptual depth that has duration, you look further into it, but takes up no actual space. That's a way to intuitively grasp the spacious present, this reality that endures without spatial dimension.
That helps. It's an analogy, but it helps bridge the gap. And Seth himself seemed pretty happy with how this particular session went down.
Oh, yeah, he definitely did. He confirmed the session came through in excellent fashion.
Yeah.
And there's that great little humorous note at the end about Jane Roberts, Rupert.
What was that again? About her doubt?
He says the material was so good that even old, doubting Thomas Rupert is impressed enough to admit that his precious subconscious simply could not be the source of it all.
Huh. That's brilliant. The ultimate compliment. Getting the channel herself to admit it feels bigger than just her own mind.
It really underscores the perceived externality of the source, at least for her experience.
Now, there was one final piece in the notes. Something much more immediate and maybe a bit chilling. That prediction about Miss Callahan.
Yeah, that lands differently, doesn't it? It wasn't just abstract cosmology. This was a follow-up on someone they knew, someone they were concerned about.
And the prediction was incredibly specific.
Frighteningly so. Seth stated she would face a severe crisis, specifically a rapid deterioration of brain tissue, and he timed it between that very evening and 2 a.m. the next morning.
Wow.
And he linked it back to the core idea, saying her ego would finally grasp it wasn't being destroyed, but taken along as itself, still independent, to join other facets of the larger entity. It was energy transformation happening right then, personally.
And Rob Butts, the note-taker, actually wrote that he felt a chill hearing that.
You can understand why. It takes these huge metaphysical laws about non-spatial reality and energy transformation and slams them right down into a specific person's immediate physical crisis. It demonstrates the absolute governance of the inner reality over the outer.
So the big takeaway from all of this, from session 44, where do we go from here?
I think the biggest practical lesson is to start valuing and trusting the one part of us that already operates largely outside the camouflage, our intuition.
Because intuition doesn't follow linear logic or strict cause and effect.
Exactly. Intuitions often feel like they come out of the blue, non-sequentially. They grasp holes, connect things based on value or pattern, not just logic. They're like little messages from the non-spatial mind, breaking through the static of the camouflage-bound brain.
So trust that gut feeling, that intuitive sense of whether a concept feels valid, even if you can't logically prove it step by step.
Yes. Feel the validity. That inner knowing, that intuitive resonance is probably your best compass for navigating this deeper reality, the value climate.
Yeah.
It lets you sense that underlying durability and spontaneity even while you're stuck in clock time.
Feel the non-spatial reality.
Yeah.
That's definitely some food for thought. Amazing stuff. Thank you for unpacking that with us.
A real pleasure. It's mind-bending stuff, but incredibly rich.
It really is. Well, that's it for this Deep Dives. Thank you all for joining us.
See you next time.
Ta-ta, tootsies.